Good morning and welcome to another edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Monday, February 21st, 2022. Judge Regina Chu literally shed tears as she ignored prosecutors' requests for at least a 7-year sentence for former police officer Kim Potter, who was convicted of manslaughter after she shot and killed Duante Wright, claiming that she thought she pulled her taser and not her gun. Potter received just 2 years and could get out even sooner. But that's really become a sidebar as African Americans continue to witness a legal system from police to prosecutors and judges that is as unbalanced and unfair today in 2022 as it was during and before the Jim Crow era. This one seemingly takes the proverbial case because the judge actually displayed more sympathy for the convicted cop than for the dead victim. We discussed this morning with Insight News publisher Al McFarlane. But first, the news headlines, and we will bring on publisher Al McFarlane for our headlines. Good morning, Al.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to see you as always, coming to us from those twin cities out there in Minnesota. Thanks a whole lot for joining us. Our first news item this morning, Al, a private funeral service is expected to take place this week for Askia Muhammad, a renowned journalist, photographer, poet, and Black press columnist who died on Friday at the age of 76. For more than 40 years, Muhammad had been a fixture on WPFW radio in Washington, D.C., and of course at The Final Call. In his column, appeared regularly in Black-owned newspapers like the Washington Informer and on BlackPressUSA.com. He was an author whose most recent book, The Autobiography of Charles 67X, featured a collection of photos, poetry, and personal essays covering his life as a politically and socially engaged journalist. The White House reached out to the Black press about Muhammad, with President Biden seeking out the journalist's family to send personal condolences. A public memorial is planned for next month, family members have said. Al, I don't know how well you knew Askia, but he certainly was very well known. We are seeing more and more tweets and comments come in as the time has gone by.
Didn't know him personally, met him, had a huge respect for him. What I knew him about was his bridge work, carrying Black people to Africa and connecting Black journalists with Africa over the years. And so he was, in my view, a Pan-Africanist, one that wanted to make sure that we had direct access to the movement and governments in the motherland in Africa, and certainly an asset to our community and to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Askia Muhammad has died at the age of 76. Certainly will be missed big time in the Black press, and I'm sure with his family for sure. Also in the news this morning, Al, a Black Florida teenager who says she was bullied for months by classmates was falsely accused of threatening her school and then wrongly detained at a juvenile detention facility for 11 days, according to her family and attorney. Now the 13-year-old's mother, Leslie Ann Davis, is suing Renaissance Charter School at Pines over the November incident. She says, I feel distanced. This is what the teen said. I feel distanced. Nia Wims, the teenager, said at a news conference. She says, I really don't want to talk to anybody. The lawsuit alleges that the girl was being bullied at the school in Pembroke Pines, about 20 miles north of Miami. Davis reported the alleged bullying in August and had requested a meeting with school officials, according to the lawsuit. The meeting never happened, and finally a complaint went out, and the school never addressed the family's concern. The bullying continued until Davis made the decision to pull Wims from the school and enroll her somewhere else. In November, Wims began talking with a Renaissance Charter School student on Instagram about the bullying. The suit identifies the second teen as just with the letters MS. After the conversation, MS allegedly created a fake Instagram page using Wims's name. While pretending to be Wims, MS allegedly sent herself messages that included threats to blow up the school and kill people, including MS and a teacher, according to the lawsuit filed. The messages were disclosed to the teacher, who informed school officials and the police. The charter school was placed on limited lockdown, but later determined to be safe. But the complaint went forth, and Pembroke Pines police began investigating what led to the lockdown and were allegedly told by MS that Wims had sent messages threatening the school, and officers then interrogated Wims, who said she had talked with MS over Instagram but did not make any threats. On November 19th, Wims was arrested and taken to a juvenile detention center. Police said in a statement at the time that she was being charged with a second-degree felony for making a written threat to do bodily harm or commit an act of terrorism. She spent 11 days in the facility and had to undergo psychological evaluations, and she was released later on November 29th after our investigators determined that the messages came from an IP address connected to MS. This is horrible.
So what's happened to MS? Do we know yet?
So right now, there has been no official charges yet, although investigators said that they are continuing their investigation.
And what's the demographic on MS? She's a white student, I'm presuming.
A white student, yes.
Yeah. And so, it highlights again what the culture would try to say is a one-off event, that these are individual failings of people with personal problems. But Stacey, I think what we have to say and see from our point of view is the consistency of this kind of activity that presumes that it's easy to discredit and destroy and characterize anyone Black. And we're used to this. I think it was, what's his name? Paul Mooney had the joke, $1-800, you know what?
Yes.
But the premise was that when anybody white is in trouble, find a plausible threat from Black people to deflect. And it happens. It was a joke, but it's not a joke. It happens all the time. This is an example of even getting down to our children. But it means that when Black boys, for example, are in private or public schools, integrated schools, systems distrust and diminish, try to destroy their sense of well-being and try to create this conformity in a Black boy that tells the Black child where and what power is, and that is not within him or his family. So there's a problem that we have to address, and it's systemic, it's pervasive, and this is one more example of it.
Yeah, and one of the comments, Paris Brown of the Baltimore Times, we couldn't agree more. She says, Al, that this is hard to imagine, to see our young children in handcuffs. It's horrible. And as we say that, let's bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. Dr. Chavis, good morning.
Good morning, Stacey Brown. Good morning, Al McFarlane.
Good morning, Dr. Brown.
This is a great way to start off this Monday morning with reality, with facts, with truth. But the pendulum of history is moving toward the interests of communities of color. It's our job in the Black press to point out these contradictions, to point out these injustices, but also it's our job to advocate that we take not just note of what's happening, but what do we do about it? 2022, we got to vote some people out of office. We got to vote some people in office, and we have to overcome all this voter suppression. That's sort of, Al, I think one way we can celebrate the 195th anniversary of the Black Press of America, which is what we are celebrating this year, is that the Black press should help lead the way for a reawakening across Black America and with Brown America, that we unite, we strategize, we organize, we mobilize, and we need to win some victories against racism, some victories against voter suppression. All these issues are interconnected, and what happened in the case that you're describing is symptomatic of a serious problem that America still has.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I tell you what, again, I was throwing that to you, Al, on the the comments, Paris Brown, it's hard to imagine see our young ones and young children in handcuffs. Bobby Henry says physical handcuffs are bad enough. However, when we put handcuffs on the mind, we got a whole other problem. And Rosalind Osgood chimes in that MS should have been arrested immediately after it was determined that MS sent the threat. Why was MS treated differently? And she puts in all capitals, race.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, back to the whole landscape. Look at the data and find out what the percentage of Black children being expelled from schools is around the country. That's the tail of the tape right there. Black children, Black boys in particular, get expelled at exponentially higher rates. So the entire apparatus, we call it the kindergarten to prison pipeline, works on identifying and dampening the spirit and the self-worth of Black children in general, Black boys in particular, so that it's almost, and we can choose to call it conspiratorial because the impact has a conspiratorial consequence where our children and our lives become fodder for the grist mill, this process of grinding up and destroying human beings for the profit of other communities. They make a business out of our misery. We get the misery, they get the money. We must say, as Dr. Ben just said, no more. Not in 2022. We have to shine a light on all of these inconsistencies, the structural arrangements, the agreements that by their nature deprive us of our rights, our constitutional rights, and also attempt to derail our sense and their sense of our humanity. We can't depend on them, but we must rely on ourselves. And we have to operate with the conviction that our being true to ourselves, Dr. Ben, eliminates or creates a process and a pathway for freeing them from their bias. Their bias is a problem for them and for us, but it's hurting us, it's killing us, right? And encouraging us to kill each other. I think that the organizing, you're talking about the Black press leading the way, redefining, creating a new narrative is the pathway to shift the dynamic for our own salvation. Doing that is the salvation of our society, of humanity, from my point of view.
Well, 195 years, as Dr. Chavis said, the Black press has been bringing these things unvarnished to you, and without edits, we don't edit it down to make it sound one way or the other. We just give the truth, don't we? Also, to go along with what you're saying, our main topic this morning, Kim Potter, she sentenced by Judge Regina Chu, who literally shed tears, ignored the prosecutor's request for at least a 7-year sentence for the former police officer out there in Minnesota, and gave her 2 years out, and Dr. Chavis, and totally ignored the dead victim's family's request, totally ignored the fact that she killed this young man, snuffed his life out, very young age. Al, you were there, you're out there, you followed the Potter trial, you followed the situation with Duante Wright from the beginning. The immediate reaction from folks in Minneapolis.
Well, this was kind of the response we expected, and we were surprised when it didn't happen this way with the George Floyd case. Nobody really believed that Derek Chauvin would be sentenced as aggressively as he was. And if you recall, our community in the country, I think the world, all of us were kind of marveling at a process that finally worked right. But that was then, this is now. And there's a pendulum here. The pendulum, George Floyd, before that, Christine Diamond, a white woman, was killed by a Black Somali police officer who said that she surprised him and his partner when they were investigating a potential, abuse situation in a dark alley in a South Minneapolis neighborhood, right? And the woman comes out of her house in the dark to the back of the car, taps on the car, and the Somali officer says, seeking to preserve and protect his partner who was driving, he pulled his service revolver and shot the person as it ended up being a woman who was unarmed and an immigrant. She was from Australia. So in that case, the officer was sentenced, I think, first and second degree manslaughter charges, and at first 15 years, now maybe 7, 8 years in prison. So that sentencing took place. So then you have George Floyd, right? And here the whole world saw how that happened. What would the sentence be? Would the George Floyd justice match the Christine Diamond justice? The court said, and the attorneys for Christine Diamond said, there has to be a transformative resolution. And by transformative, they refer to money. And Christine Diamond's estate got awarded $30 million. So then here comes George Floyd getting killed by the city of Minneapolis, the police department. And the Black community, and particularly the lawyers involved, expected that there had to be transformative resolution in this case as well. So you had a fairly major criminal settlement and civil settlements in that, plus you have a federal trial still going on with some of the defendants in the George Floyd murder. So now fast forward to today, this sentence for the killing of Duante Wright. It's almost as if the social structure is saying enough is enough. We've given you sort of your comeback. So, you know, we put the Black cop in jail, and we gave the white family a lot of money. You expected the same from us, and we've given you that in the George Floyd case, not because we're being fair, but because you burned up the country, right? We're reacting to this pressure. And now the society seems to be saying, enough is enough. You've had your day, and we're going to go back to business as usual. And so a 2-year sentence, but you know, I was watching Dr. Chavis and Stacy a YouTube show the other day, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but there's a case of the Nashville police officer. His name was Delkey, who was indicted on a first-degree murder charge for shooting a Black man, Daniel Hambrick, in Nashville in 2019. Same situation. This guy gets a plea deal, though indicted and charged with first-degree murder. He ends up getting a plea deal for manslaughter and a recommended sentence of 3 years. Mm-hmm. The tragedy is that the family, the victim family, was not even notified of the deal. Yeah. And in court, the Black attorney for the family charged that here's a case of a prosecutor, the defendant's attorney as a former prosecutor, and the prosecutor being country club golf course buddies and cooking up a golf course deal, not even involving the family, the victimized family, and certainly not involving justice. Coming up with a story saying, oh, the guy is sorry, and that a 3-year sentence is enough in exchange for his murder of a Black man. So yeah, we keep this seeing case that. Reminds me of that. Here we go again. Yeah. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the pattern from this point on. That's my question.
Yeah, we keep seeing that. But we also saw something along the lines of what you're saying in the Arbery plea negotiations, where the family, Ahmaud Arbery's family, said no way, no how. They went public. They had a news conference. They put pressure on prosecutors and the judge to say, don't take this deal with these guys. And sure enough, the judge responded by throwing out that plea deal. So Dr. Chavis, I know that it takes us to take action as well, not just to wait for prosecutors or others to take the action.
Well, one of our publishers in the last 195 years of the Black press said it best. His name is Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass said in the North Star, freedom is a constant struggle. What we warn because of the pressure in the George Floyd case, told us that we cannot relent.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reverse gear. And we should not see these cases in isolation. And I'm glad Al McFarlane pointed about the Nashville case, which is connected to the Minneapolis case, which is connected to the California case, which is connected to the North Carolina case. All these cases are connected. What connects them? Systemic racism, centuries of economic exploitation, centuries of miseducation, centuries of racial hatred and racial prejudice. And you do not overcome all of that. I'm glad Brother McFarlane mentioned the term transformative justice, transformative equity, transformative equality. We have not yet transformed the system. We're chipping away at it. I make a comparison to dismantling apartheid in South Africa to dismantling apartheid in America. Keep in mind, apartheid in South Africa was patterned after apartheid in America.
Mm-hmm.
People think, oh, well, how did these racists in South Africa come up with apartheid? Because they got it from the United States of America. They got it from the transatlantic slave trade, which started in 1519, not 1619. And so I think that the lesson, Al and Stacey, is that we have to be vigilant. We take what victories we can win. And when we have defeats, when we have setbacks, we have to come back stronger. I like that analogy of the pendulum. The pendulum swings in both directions, but who determines which way the pendulum swings?
Mm-hmm.
When Dr. King said that the arc, or the moral arc of justice, the moral arc
Of the
bends
universe.
towards justice.
Yeah.
Okay, who bends it? Who bends the arc? What is the pressure that bends that arc? That's where we come in. That's where the black press come in. That's where the black church comes in. That's where black-owned businesses come in. That's where the black community, but not alone. I keep saying we have to stand with other communities of color in solidarity and action and continue to fight for freedom, justice, and equality every day, not just during Black History Month, but every day. We have to point out these wrongs, try to right them the best way we can, but never lose our fighting spirit, never lose and what we learned in the aftermath of George Floyd was that people will become in solidarity with us if they see us move. But if we're standing still, if we're in shock and awe every time something, I remember what happened when all those people were killed in the AME church in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
People were just utterly shocked
Mm-hmm.
that something like that would happen in a church while people are praying, But that's the systemic, endemic nature of white supremacy that we all have to work together to overcome and to transform.
Well, Al, so let me go back to Kim Potter. 2 years, does that mean she's going to serve 2 years? Or doesn't that mean that she can possibly get out even sooner?
They say the likelihood is 16 months, and so it won't be 2 years, it'll be a year and a half. And, what I'm hearing on the street is what kind of deals will she be offered? Will she get? I don't know whether the settlement requires that she never, ever benefit or profit from any selling of a story or speaking engagements or anything associated with the outcome of this trial.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, I was definitely going to ask you about that because she'll do the 16 months and then she'll come out and she'll be a TV star
and get rich. That's right. Well, it's like what's the kid's name in Wisconsin that
yes, Kyle
shot
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse, right? I mean, just that is incredible for all of us to think about him, and he killed white people, right? But him walking past law enforcement and the presumption that it was okay for him to carry arms and walk past law enforcement with the arms till they finally realized he's the one that did the the shooting and the killing. And it's like the story last week of the kids in a fight in the mall in New Jersey,
Yes,
right?
we brought that here and let it be known. Yep.
Law enforcement comes in and presumes automatically guilt and subdues a black person, a child, and then tells the white kid to go sit down. This ain't about you. And from what I saw, the white kid was offering his hands to be cuffed, and they said, "Sit down. We're not doing you like we're doing this guy here." And it looked like the black guy was getting worse in the fight and was being pummeled by the whites when the cops interrupted. But the point, the details aren't the point, the process and the pattern is the point. And so I think we have to continue to point out every instance of injustice. Every time we see it, we got to call it out, speak about it, and challenge white people, challenge ourselves. Because what happens is that we become so indoctrinated to believe that this is the way the world is, and that if we're in the news, we obviously are at fault. The society holds us at fault all the time. The default position of our society is that black people did it, black people caused it, black people make it not work, or living off of white people, none of which is true. And what is true is that this entire apparatus you could call a criminal enterprise, and the criminality of it is in its relationship with black people, the original sin being the theft of life and labor of African people. And so, to the degree that this country is not willing to admit and adjust, we got a problem. That problem is going to exist. They're not going to change it. We must. Some of them can be educated. Many of them can be educated. All of them can be redeemed. There's no human being that is beyond redemption. But the work has to come and will come from us. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and real quick, Dr. Chavez, as we wind down, Al McFarlane of Insight News, he mentioned the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Was that sort of a pendulum swing the other way when we saw when he was arrested? We saw even celebrities start giving money to his defense and speaking out on his behalf, and of course we saw how that judge, a despicable way in which he ran that courtroom. Was that a pendulum swing in that way, Dr. Chavez?
Absolutely, it was a reaction. Keep in mind, Donald Trump got elected as a reaction to Barack Obama for 8 years. Let's not forget that.
Yep.
And now what's going to get ready to happen? You have Biden and Harris at the White House. A reaction is coming in 2024. In fact, we're going to see a reaction in 2022. And the question is, what are we going to do? Are we going to be observers of the pendulum swing, or are we going to make it swing in a certain direction? I think it's our responsibility not just to forecast the future, but to help shape it, to help construct it, to help transform it by our actions. And I think if we would take these steps toward mobilizing and organizing, we will get others to join us. But as Dr. King used to tell us, the ball is in our court. What are we going to do? And I think that we can still make progress this year. We have to fight for the gangs. Look how they chipped away voting rights, and look all the voter suppression laws that are going on. Look at all of the gerrymandering that's going on. This has called to action to us. I like what Al said. We should not ever assume that white supremacy is normal. We should never assume that these systematic racism cases in the courts. What the judge showed in the Kim Potter case, she was more empathetic to the perpetrator of the violence, with hardly no empathy for Duante Wright. And why? Because he was a black child, a black man, And so our responsibility, we have to make sure that that family is healed, resourced. I don't think it's over with. I think there's civil rights violations involved in that. I think the U.S. Justice Department needs to get involved, as they are involved in the Arbery trial now in Georgia. So we have to be consistently, not just aware, but consistently involved. And we create the change that we desire by our own actions.
Well, thank you so much. Of course, Dr. Chavis, Al McFarlane. You guys can catch Al McFarlane every day on the Black Press USA's Facebook and YouTube page with Conversations with Al McFarlane. He is the publisher of Insight News, one of our fantastic member newspapers. And stay tuned each and every day this year as the Black Press of America celebrates 195 years. We wish to plead our own cause. For too long, others have spoken for us. Those were the words of the founders of the Black Press. Thanks for joining. Let it be known. We will see you tomorrow.